great turnout, and I want to keep things moving, so I really want to thank you all for being here. Welcome to tonight's public speaking competition hosted by the Communication Society. This is the first event of its kind, and we are privileged to have you here among us this evening. The theme for tonight's event is communication and education, and that means that the theme for tonight's speeches will be oriented around that topic. However, this is a competition after all, so I hope you will help me welcome in my judges for tonight. Our first judge is Dr. Stephen Stefano. Stephen is a graduate of the Department of Communications PhD program in 2011. Stephen is a Rhode Island native and a huge Red Sox fan. Let's please give a warm welcome for Dr. Stephen Stefano. Our second judge for the evening is a near and dear friend of mine. Mr. David Kiner is a state representative for the 59th district here in our home state of Connecticut. David graduated from the Eastern Connecticut State University with a degree in political science. Please welcome David Kiner. And our last judge of the evening is somebody that you might recognize. She is the on-air and on-field talent for the Department of Athletics for the Yukon Husky Nation. You might have recognized her interviewing folks like Gino Auriemma and Coach Ollie throughout the course of our dual national championship season. Please give a warm welcome to Emily Noonan. All right, judges, please have a seat, get comfortable. We will be looking forward to your feedback throughout the course of the evening. So the setup for tonight's contest, we'll have 3 rounds. The first round will feature a set of prepared speeches, again, focused on the concepts of communication and its role that is played in education. As I look around me, it seems as if we have all of the ingredients for a great competition. We have our judges, we have a great audience, we have a stage, and we have a microphone. So without further ado, please let me welcome to the stage our first speaker, Mr. Stephen Riley. Stephen Riley is a marketing major from Dix Hills, New York, and I hope that you will give him a warm welcome. Good luck, Stephen.
All right. Today we're talking about communication, and I want to mention that communication is going on all the time in the educational process. Am I right? From student to student, from teacher to teacher, and even student to teacher. You have communication going on in all aspects of the UConn campus. But today, I want to talk about a specific type of communication, the complex, communicative environment of a group project. Now, I see all your faces in the crowd. It's a little dark, but I see all your faces in the crowd, and they're all like this. Nobody likes the group project. But let's bring it back to a time where maybe you did. Remember elementary school? You got a group project. It was great. You got to work with your 2 best friends, Billy and Jimmy. You played ball out in the yard, came inside and did that group project and banged it out. Easy A. Because it wasn't about the quality of the work. It was about being able to work with others. But here in college, they're not so nice, am I right? It's all about the quality of the work. You want to make sure that, things are exactly how you want them, the way you imagine them. And you have to rely on people that you've never met before for 50% of your English grades this semester? Are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. So let me paint a picture of how group projects go on in the college environment. It's you and 3 strangers that scuttle around a table. People that you've never met before. People you wouldn't feel comfortable having coffee with, nonetheless trusting with a huge part of your grade. Getting together and nobody's saying a word because everyone's too nervous. But I know your type, right? You know my type. I get up there, I go, hi, my name's Steve. I break the ice. I go, here's my email, end. But I'm cut off. Class is already over. We're moving on to a different topic. People got other obligations. So now, I'm not going to be disheartened, right? I'm going to go back to my dorm room. I'm going to write up an email and say, hey, I want to meet with you guys. I want to get together. But that's never as easy as it seems. You see, one of your group members, Willie, he's so busy with the lacrosse team this semester, he's not going to be able to make a single meeting. And your other group member, Jacqueline, she's really busy with her sorority, so she's also not going to be able to make it. And then lastly, your busiest member of all, who would have thought, Connor, is the senior vice treasurer of the Basket Weaving Society. So he's most definitely not going to make it, and I didn't even know UConn had that club. So you forget about the group project for a week, and of course, it's the night that it's due, and you're doing all the work by yourself, a 4-person load, just to go sleepless that night, wake up the next morning, and get a C. Well, that's a disaster, right? And we don't like disasters. So what I'm gonna go through today is how to make your group project spectacular. So let's go through a couple tips. The first one I wanna start with, and something that I think is really important that I had in that scenario, is you wanna be proactive. You wanna start off with that email, with that saying, hey, here's my name, here's where I'm from and everything like that, because that's gonna allow you to establish a timeline, get other meetings together, get that atmosphere going. But now let's assume that you do have those group members, all of them that are just so busy. You know what I mean? They're gonna come late to every meeting. So what is the test of the group? Where's the communication involved? It's the ability to fill in for them, fill them in later on, and overall have the group keep moving without them being present, for at least a meeting or two. You see, no great group in history has ever been able to continue on in life without one of its members not being present. People got to be able to substitute. That's a big part of it. And now something I want to go into that I think is very, very important is assigning the roles. You see, roles are a major part of any successful group. I'm talking professional sports teams. I'm talking major companies. You want to be able to come together, analyze strengths and weaknesses, and say, hey, I think you'd be great here. You want to make sure that you're not putting people in the wrong roles. Here's an example of that. You have that one shy girl in class that never talks. She might not want to be the head spokesperson of the group. And maybe flip that around. You have a math-heavy role. Maybe you should flip that over to the actuarial science major. With that being said, don't pigeonhole people. If people want to exit their comfort zone, that means they're going to be ambitious and they're going to want to get work done. You want to really let those people evolve and work with you. Because what I'm going to talk about next is the exact opposite of what you want. And that's problem members. So we all know those problem members. You got the control freaks, the people that want things done exactly the way they want things done. If the comma's in the wrong place and reprinting the whole paper, it's 3-paragraph emails every single time, 4 times a day. It's ridiculous. But even worse than that are, of course, the no-shows. The type of kids that don't come to the meetings, and if they do, they show up late, don't contribute anything. So what my strategy for these people are is I like to take them aside and I say, hey, your effort and your progress in this group is really important to me. And I'm hoping you and I can work together to make something happen. But sometimes they don't respond to that. And even though you're trying to be as nice as possible and help the entire group, you might have to do what I like to call the alternative method, and that's unfortunately biting the bullet. Now you're looking at me and you're saying, Steve, that's just not fair. When I work in groups, people should take that workload that they're assigned. But if people aren't going to do the work, you need to remember that even though it's the group's project, at the end of the day, it's your grade. Nobody wants to go into the summertime uncomfortable and upset about the GPA that you have on Husky CT later on. So, there's obviously a couple points that I'm not going to hit today because I just don't have the time. Things like, having the group be a democracy with the content and avoiding conflict. But the last thing I really want to touch on, and the thing that people seem to forget over and over, is the fact that you want to be a genuine and good human being within these groups. You want to be friendly. You see, today they might be a group member, but tomorrow they might be a coworker. They might be a friend. Or, ironically enough, they might be another group member. And at the end of the day, people really, really want to work with people that they like, just like you and I did back in elementary school. So I'm hoping that what I talked about today, you can take back to your next group project, and not only make it successful, but also comfortable and enjoyable as well. Thank you.
That's not how this works. See, the judges, they get to have their chance.
I was scared. I didn't want to come back.
Judges, some feedback for our friend Stephen here.
Thank you, Rory. Hi, Stephen. Hi, contestants. Welcome tonight. Congratulations already for coming out here and doing what you're doing. Stephen, you're a funny guy.
Thank you.
You're a funny guy, and some of your jokes landed. And when they landed, we could feel it. Some of them didn't land, right? And you were helpful. And some of your advice landed, and some of it didn't land. And the only reason it didn't land, and the only reason some of those jokes didn't land, was because you were a little bit planned, right? You know how to do this. You are a good speaker, and you're going to go really far in this competition. I have no doubt about that. But what I hope is that when you come out here these next couple times, you're a little less planned, a little more natural. Everything's going to come together if you do that.
I agree with you about that. I think the way that you come across is very natural. Like you can see that that's a natural thing for you, so just allow it to be a little more. And I think what would help you do that is your speed. You're a little bit quick, and I know there's a short period of time for you to say everything that you have to say, but I think if you slowed down a little bit, that would help you kind of be a little bit more natural. I thought you had great humor. It landed a lot for me. I laughed a lot. You used the word scuttle, which I really enjoyed. I haven't heard that word in quite a long time. And I'm definitely the girl that makes the whole group reprint it for having a comma missing, so negative for that for saying that I'm the annoying one, but I'll let that slide.
Thank you, judges. And Steve, I have to say, I do agree with both of the judges so far, as you can tell it was rehearsed. However, I'm not going to dock you too many points for that. I think it's impressive that you didn't read a speech. So we know that you did memorize it, and I thought that was very good. It was entertaining. You mentioned it was funny. It was funny. At one point, actually, when you first started, you insulted me because I was probably one of those guys, but that's okay. You came over when you started entertaining us a little more. And then at one point, you were almost like a motivational speaker in there. I really like that aspect too. And then you got into your tips, which I thought were common sense, but then you go back to how you first started, you were talking about the examples. Maybe it isn't common sense. So I liked your presentation. Thank you for kicking things off. It's not always the easiest thing to do. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, judges. Our second speaker for this evening is Mr. Brendan Costello. Brendan is a political science and finance major. I don't use a mic all semester, so I tried that. Can I get a little hip back there? I'm on. Okay. Brendan, come join me. Brendan is a political science and finance major from Cromwell, Connecticut. Please give a warm welcome to Brendan Costello.
All right, thank you very much for that introduction. Thank you everyone for being here. It's my distinct pleasure and my honor to be here at this first annual competition. I have to admit, when I found out the topic for tonight's competition was going to be communication, I was less than surprised. Firstly, because it was put on by the Comm Society, and second, because communication in our society has become something of a buzzword. You hear it all the time. I went to a job interview last week, and I was drilled not once, not twice, but 5 times in my communication skills. Enough already. But the fact is, when you take a step back and you really look at the essence of communication, what it means to your life, you see it's the foundation for everything you do. And I look out at this crowd, and I see a lot of people, and they're all very diverse with different experiences, different majors, different goals in life. And I won't try to boil you all down to a soundbite. I won't try to make you all into one common theme. But what I can do is provide some of my experiences as a student and as secretary of the Law Society. And I hope that some of the things that I say can resonate with you. And if they don't, at least you can appreciate how communication played a role in my life and perhaps how it can play a role in yours. So with academics, it seems pretty self-explanatory, right? It seems pretty common sense. You have to communicate with your peers. And Stephen did a great bit on group projects, and as someone who had done 3 group projects actually today before coming here, I don't want to say any more about that. I'm frustrated enough as it is. But the fact is, I'd like to put a little bit more positive spin on it. A wise man once told me that to really learn something, you have to be able to communicate it to other people. That wise man may or may not have been my 3rd grade teacher, but the point still stands. I believe that when you're studying for a test or an exam or a quiz, it helps to sit down with a group of friends or classmates and to really see if you can speak the material, to explain it to someone else. And if you're able to communicate a page or a paragraph or even a whole chapter, if you're feeling gamey, to another person, I think that means that you've learned it. And I think that can have a very positive effect on your education, your academics. And additionally, I believe that your academics are the single most important thing you can do at the University of Connecticut, but they're supported and they're complemented by other things, right? Your extracurriculars. I know Stephen mentioned the Basket Weaving Society, but maybe it's the Comm Society or the Law Society. Shameless plug, sorry about that. Or even the Beekeeping Society, which does exist. I checked on the way here. And the fact is that when you're not in class, right, you have to fill up your resume with something else. And you have to enjoy your time here, your 4 years at UConn. But in a group, you have to learn. You have to meet the other people. And you can communicate with them, to network, to find out what they're interested in, what you're interested in. And you have to work together for shared goals, whether it's career goals, or project goals, or simply meeting new people. And when I became secretary of that club, I found a new challenge, and that was getting people to come to meetings. If any of you have been to the first meeting of a club, you'll see there are 50 people there. The second meeting, maybe there's 5. And I don't know if people are coming just to put it on their resume or they simply lose interest, but the fact is you have to motivate people to come. You have to explain to them, you have to communicate to them the experiences they'll gain from coming to your events. You have to tell them exactly what you're going to be doing and why they should take their precious time and spend it with you. And I've learned from my successes and I've learned from my failures in that role. Sometimes I'll send out a short email, nobody will show up. Other times I'll try to communicate my excitement for the club. I'll try to communicate what they're going to get out of it, and more people will show up. And that's been a learning experience for me on how communication really plays a role in your extracurriculars. Now, I don't know how much of my experiences are going to mirror with yours. I don't know if any of you are in a lot of clubs or if any of you have really studied with other people, but the fact is that my experiences are one iota, one facet of what communication has to offer. I urge all of you in this audience to think about what you're passionate about, think about what you do, what makes you you, and to apply those things, whether it's academics, whether it's clubs, whether it's something else entirely. And think about how you can improve your communication. Think about how your communication can become a skill and an asset, and how you can become a better leader from it, how you can become a better student from it, how you can become a better secretary from it, beekeeper, basket weaver, whatever you have. And the fact is, if you take nothing else from my talk today, take this. You have the power and the responsibility to constantly, no matter how good you are at communication, to improve yourself, to improve your skills. Because it'll get you better grades. It'll get you better networking opportunities. It'll get you more people at your events or whatever your goals are. Thank you very much.
Nice job. Certainly there's a few judges.
Back here, Brendan.
Judges, be kind.
I think we will. I'll be kind to you, Brendan. I thought that was, you had great eye contact with the audience. You had great hand and communication skills, nonverbal skills, I guess you would call them, with the audience as I was just watching you interact with them. Your ad-libs were great. You mentioned Steve's speech and your segues from his to yours were very well done. I think that the saying here is that you're wise beyond your years. I was listening to you give advice to these students, and to me, if I'd closed my eyes, I would have thought it was a professor who'd been here for several years giving that advice to students. You talked about your experiences, and you were able to really take away from those and help out the students here. I liked it, and I will pass it on with that. If you want any critique, I would think that you need a better message, maybe at the beginning and end. But other than that, I liked it.
I was going to say something similar about that message, just the initial draw that, like, I know exactly what this topic is. It was a little bit in the air about, you know, the general topic we got, but like a more specific point right off the bat, just drawing you in. All right, I know what I'm settling in here for the next few minutes. I thought you were very poignant. Wise beyond your years was a great phrase for that. You picked your spots to emphasize words, and I thought that made those more poignant by doing that. You did give yourself a shameless plug with the Secretary of the Law Society, but we're good with that. So overall, I liked it. I thought you were very composed, and it was great.
Brendan, I want to hear you author a podcast. and then later in life, when you get a little bit more gravel to the voice, some self-help books on TV. You were so relaxed and so composed up there, and it showed, it echoed. There are young scholars who wish they could stand in front of a room this size and speak with that degree of poise. And I thought that was excellent. So kudos to that. David mentioned the ad-lib, which was wonderful. You were listening. That's important to me, that you were listening and talking and thinking while you were speaking. Those are all important things. The topic was a bit broad, and I think that would be my challenge to you next time, is that do not come out here with platitudes. But other than that, wonderfully done.
Judges, if you're going to take up any more airtime, we're going to have to put a spot for you right on the agenda. Okay, these kids want to get home. Our third speaker for the evening is Ian Maxwell. Ian is a management information systems major who hails from Ledyard, Connecticut. Let's do a big warm welcome to Ian Maxwell.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm so thrilled to see you all here tonight, and this is a great honor for me. So, when I was first approached about the topic tonight, the role of communication in the education system, I asked myself a question. How is it that people truly learn? And I fervently believe that it goes far beyond just the memorization of facts. That if you do A and B and C, you're always going to get D. It takes internalizing a concept, internalizing information, and making it personally relevant to you. And that's why I think that it's important to recognize your passions and use that as a springboard to learn lessons about communication and about life. For me, that passion is music. And I hope that by talking to you a little bit about the lessons I've learned from music, it can help everyone here think about what your passions are and the lessons to be drawn. The first thing I love about music is its universality. The fact that it's the language of emotion. And when you're speaking, when you're communicating, it's so important to recognize the commonality you have with the audience or the person you're talking to. I just want to demonstrate this point by asking a couple questions. Raise your hand if it applies to you and keep your hand up throughout the questions. So how many of you here are involved in some kind of music or performance group or a newcomer? Raise your hands. All right. How many of you here play an instrument or sing, and singing in the shower counts? Don't be shy. Hands up. All right, all right. How many of you here listen to music on an everyday basis? Look around the room. You've got something in common with every single person here. And that's the first step to communication. The next step is preparation. Whether you're going to present about, a scientific topic or you're preparing a song, you need to work hard. You need to memorize. And if there's one section or one passage that's really getting you, you plug at it until it's down perfect. And then once you've internalized that information, that's what's going to give you the freedom to take your communication and your performance to the next level. And that's evolving emotion. Think about when you're having a conversation with somebody. If I was to have a conversation with you, sir, when we're talking, you're not just listening to the words that I'm saying. You're also looking at my body language. How am I holding myself? Are we making eye contact? Do I sound sincere about what I'm saying? This is the context of communication. And it's the same thing with music. Think of a song, just the first song that jumps to mind. It doesn't just resonate with you because of the lyrics, even though that's important. It's also because of how it makes you feel. Is it a beat that you can really get into? Does the music engage you? Or does it remind you of something in your life? Was it the song you danced with your date at prom with? Or is it a song that just annoys the living hell out of you? Those are both legitimate feelings for music and for topics and for communication. The next step, once you've recognized how important emotion is in communication, as a performer, you need to be able to capitalize on that and to present that emotion. If you're happy about a topic, if you're getting excited about it, you need to get everyone in the audience excited too. They need to feel what you're feeling. But if it's something serious or something sad, you need every single person to feel the gravity of what you have to say and really internalize it. But if it's something you're passionate about, you need to make sure the person in the back row can feel that passion. And if you need to hold the room, you do it until you're ready. These are all skills. Learning how to connect with your audience, knowing how to prepare for something, knowing how to present emotion. They are not exclusive to music. They're not exclusive to public speaking. These are lessons that you can draw from any passion in your life. And the secret is to know how to ask yourself those questions. What is it I'm passionate about? What are the lessons I can learn? And if we encourage people to ask themselves those questions, starting from the beginning of their education, that's going to be a skill. And the skills that they draw from it are not just going to last them during their time in public school. It's not just going to last them for their time in university pursuing a higher education. It's going to last them for the rest of their lives. And that's where the value of education lies. Providing people with lifelong skills for continual self-betterment. And I hope that all of you here will take a minute and ask yourself, what is my passion? What can I learn? And that will help us all in recognizing the true role of education and the true role of communication and the role of self-identity. Thank you so much.
I thought that was really great. I thought your stage presence was wonderful. I think you used the stage probably more than anyone has so far, and it showed. You really picked your spots. I mean, when you said hold the room was held. I think you did a really good job honing in on that. The crowd interaction, making everyone raise your hand, it's like my worst nightmare, but I'm sure everyone played along. It was great sport, so kudos to you for that. Good crowd participation. Yeah, I felt like you were the kind of a speaker that you would pay a lot of money for and go to a weekend seminar and you do your spiel and you wonder if you're getting ripped off, but like you're really selling it. So I think you look very natural up there.
I did my dissertation on emotion and drama, so you had me from the start with this topic, and I don't know if you've been Googling or whatever, but no, I thought you did a great job with it. And, honestly, knowing something about the topic and the role of it in communication, I thought that you really explained it well and articulated it well. I liked the passion you showed in your speech, because without passion in this speech, this thing falls apart very quickly, right? I thought your vocal variety out there, the different things you did with your voice, the way you had this audience, as Emily said, you held them, was wonderful. And I think that putting it together like that was really strong. If I had one thing I could have critiqued, I felt like you peaked a little early in this speech. When you held the room, you held the room. And I don't know how you rearranged this to get that closer to the end, but you kind of trickled off just a little bit after that. It's a small tweak, but it's a wonderful speech.
With the drop the mic and walk off the stage kind of a moment.
Thank you, Emily. And Ian, good job. The organizers of this event did a great job in picking a diverse group up here because, unlike Steve, I have no musical abilities whatsoever. I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't play an instrument, but I can pay attention, and I was paying attention to your speech. I thought you did well. You talked about passion. You were certainly passionate up there. You talked about preparation. You and so far all the other speakers too. I'll give all of you this. You prepared very well. And I talked right from the get-go. You guys aren't reading a speech. Your preparation outstanding. So not only are you articulating it, but you walk the walk and talk the talk. So Ian, I had a little bit of a difficult time tying the music to communication. I tried. I'm not very good at music again, but I thought that you did well. I don't want to repeat what they said, but I do agree with them. They talked about stage presence, they talked about all that. I agree with them, and I think you did a great job.
Can we do a little subway shuffle, maybe an intermission or something for us? It's always number 2. All right, audience, I think it's time that this competition introduce its first lady, and so I know that we have some fans for Stephanie up there. So our next contestant is Stephanie Marie Regier, who hails from Chaplin, Connecticut, and is a marketing major. Please give a warm welcome to Stephanie. Thank you.
I wish you could see how many people are in this room right now. So hey, shout out to all of you for coming out here tonight. And hey, shout out to the dance team. I don't know if you know this, but they're performing for you guys later on tonight. And it just so happens that I'm also a member of the university's dance team. Thank you. Yeah. So being in front of all of you here tonight is really exciting and kind of makes me feel at home with my background in dance. But I'll be completely honest with you, when it came to this whole public speaking competition, I had no idea what to talk about. So just like any other stressed out college kid, I called my mom. And you know what she said to me? And I quote, you can even ask her, she's sitting right there. She said, Steph, just mean everything you say and it'll be a piece of cake. Yeah. Well, aren't moms just the most clever thing in the world? Because as it turns out, what she meant by piece of cake was something easy and enjoyable. But I went to a culinary arts high school. So a piece of cake to me takes this combination of ingredients, this process of baking them in an oven, and then later presenting them for others before you can even enjoy the cake. Well, then it clicked. Just like the recipe for that piece of cake, there is a recipe for a successful education. Now stay with me here. Instead of ingredients like eggs and flour, the ingredients of this recipe are the interactions you have on a regular basis. The process, instead of baking, it's what you make out of those ingredients. And the final presentation of this recipe is what you have to show for your successful education. Now, we interact with a lot of people here at UConn. You agree, pass people by all the time. But the people we interact with on a regular basis, our friends, our peers, our teammates, we see them all the time. And then we have other ingredients that are outside of the classroom. Our parents who are invested in our education, our coaches, people that definitely contribute to our recipe as a whole. Now this large variety of ingredients each contribute differently to our recipe and enhance our flavors. The next step of our recipe is to process the ingredients together. This process is building a relationship with each of your ingredients, the people that you've interacted with. By having this process, you are discovering and appreciating how each of those ingredients can contribute and enhance your recipe as a whole. Now, when you process this information, you need to think about who exactly influenced your life the most. Now, can you think of your favorite teacher? Probably. It's someone that you respect and someone that you find personable. Now, in a class of 15 kids, it's very easy to build a relationship with a teacher. They know your name. They might even know something about you. But come to UConn with a class of 600 students, and it seems almost impossible to build a relationship with that professor. Well, my favorite professor of all time did not know my name. My favorite professor of all time, I knew, loved dogs. I knew his theories. And having this perceived relationship with my professor made me want to learn more from him. It was his use of self-disclosure that had me and the 600 kids surrounding me want to learn more from him and respect what he could contribute to our recipe. Now, some people don't have interactions with a lot of people, but they build a relationship from books and literature. Now, stay with me and hear this too. They build a relationship with the author's words and ideas that help them discover themselves and their capability to have a fulfilling and fruitful recipe. Now, once you've processed all of your ingredients, it's time to present them. Not in a silver platter, but in papers and speeches and knowledge and experience that you have that you can share with others. Now, as every great chef knows, presenting your information comes with feedback, both nonverbal and verbal. Feedback can come in two different forms. It can come in criticism, and that can be used as an ingredient to use again in your recipe to make it better. The second type of feedback is approval. This approval means that your audience is enjoying your recipe, enjoying the food that you created for them. So, my presentation of my recipe that I have made with my own ingredients thus far is in this speech to you. And as my first taste testers of my recipe, my goal is to help you expand your palate, try new things, maybe even influence your recipe like my ingredients have influenced mine. Now the final step of your recipe, my personal favorite, the eating, where you can enjoy your recipe, but it's all about self-satisfaction. Because that is when you know in your gut, literally, that you have continued the cyclical process of education, that what you have shared with others, they have enjoyed, and they will use to continue their own recipe. Now, the most important thing I want you to remember about this recipe is that unlike your favorite devil's chocolate cake, this recipe, you can never be too full. So I want to dare you to never be shy to try new things, never be hesitant to acquire new tastes, and never stop learning. Because the interactions you make with others can only enhance your relationship with them and overall enhance your recipe. So go ahead, push yourself out there. Dare to be different, dare to be an ingredient in someone else's life, and I guarantee you that creating your own recipe will literally be a piece of cake.
Nice job, Stephanie. Judges?
Thank you, Rory and Stephanie. Well done. Let me just say, you had me from the beginning. As a mama's boy myself, you must be very proud of Stephanie. She did a great job with that. Stephanie, one of the first words that I wrote down in my notes here was very natural. And through your entire speech, I thought the same thing. You were very, very natural up there. And to tell you the truth, actually, before I get into my remarks, I have a question for the judges. I get confused with movie ratings and restaurant ratings. Good restaurants, 5 stars, 4 stars? What's the best? 5?
She would know, she'd call her.
I'll ask you. Is it a 4-star restaurant?
I think it's 5.
5 star. Let's say 5 stars is the best. So anyway, you gave Recipe for Success. I thought your speech was very well done. You had a great recipe for a great speech. You had a great final product. What you were making was a speech up there. I'm not going to give you the amount of stars now that I was going to give you, but you did very well. Again, you're very natural up there. I enjoyed listening to you.
I think you have tied in the theme from the beginning to the end better than anyone has done so far. I mean, you stuck with it all the way through. It was clear that that was the topic, and we were going through it all the way through. I thought that was really great. You definitely related to the audience, talking about sitting in lecture halls with 600 people. You feel like all that stuff with food. I mean, everyone can relate to that. So I thought that was good. The natural, it's clear. You walk out here, like you said, you walk out here and you're natural. I would say a hair theatrical at times. So, I mean, you're so charismatic. You clearly perform in front of people all the time. You have that naturally. So I would say just here and there, little parts make it a little bit more natural and less like you're in a play and really like you're speaking to the person, not to the lights kind of thing. But I thought it was great. You came out, you looked the part, and you hammered it home. I thought it was great.
I agree. You were incredibly personable, and I think that's really important. And I think that, as was said before, the energy that you showed at times was a little bit scripted, right? A little bit rehearsed, but it was never frowned upon. And I don't think the audience felt repelled by it. And that's the thing you always have to worry about with that, right? You've been to that play before. It was probably in elementary school, right? So now I think we'd like to see you come back a little bit to the open, honest communication. I think the next 2 rounds are going to give you the opportunity to do that. I really hope you got a chance to meet your favorite professor at some point, considering that. Yeah, okay, because I felt bad when you said I didn't know my name. It wasn't. At any rate, I think you did a really strong job with this. You've got a couple things you can tweak, and you're going to go forward quite well.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, judges. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we have one contestant remaining to finish off the beginning of our first round here. Our next contestant and our final contestant for the first round is Aiden Call. Aiden is from West Hartford, Connecticut, and is a sports management major. Please give me a hand to welcome Aiden Call to the stage. Thank you.
It was a cool fall evening in Iowa when a farmer came back from the field after a long day of work, only to find his son smoking a pack of cigarettes in the backyard. He walked up to his son, who was sheepishly staring back at him, snatched the cigarettes out of his hand, and said, "Come with me, we're going for a walk in the orchard." As they walked to the orchard, the sun was setting on the horizon, and they came upon the first set of trees, which had recently been planted only a week ago. The farmer said to his son, "Pick one of those trees out of the ground." And the son, who was a strong farmer boy, plucked the tree out of the ground and looked up to his father, who was already walking down the path. He caught up with his father, and they walked a couple hundred more yards, until they came to the second set of trees, which had been planted a couple months earlier. Not fully grown, but stronger than the first group. Again, the farmer said to his son, pick one of these trees out of the ground. The son struggled. After 15 minutes, he was finally able to dislodge the tree. Panting, he looked up at his father again. He had continued down the path. Now, as they crept down the path, 100 more yards, the sun was almost completely gone. And they came to the oldest trees in the entire orchard. A third time, the farmer said to his son, pull one of these trees out of the ground. The son looked at his father, looked at the massive apple tree, and then back at his father again and said, there's no way I can do that. That tree's way too strong. The roots have been there for far too long. And the farmer said to his son, the same holds true for bad habits, and threw his cigarettes back to him. Now, I could have just told you guys that the moral of this story, in a bullet point fashion, is that the longer you let your bad habits grow, the stronger they become. But there's a reason that I chose to put it in the form of a story. Stories have been around since the beginning of when we get back to the beginning of things. They're the way in which we, as humans, communicate from individual to individual and from generation to generation. Sir Isaac Newton once said, I stand tall because I stand on the shoulders of giants. He was able to make advancements in his field because there was a base of knowledge already there. And that base of knowledge would be impossible to draw from if we didn't have stories. But today, in much of our learning, I would argue the storytelling aspect has gone away a little bit. We focus more on bolded text, which tells only the concept, but doesn't focus on the context that surrounds it. We have the information that we need, but we don't have the greater understanding of the topic as a whole. I think we need to go back to where storytelling plays a greater role in our communication. It interests the viewer, it allows for interpretation, and it allows for an application of what we learn. And if you think about what interests the viewer in, just think about your favorite TV show. Your TV show is a story, it keeps you coming back every week. And even if it's the Jersey Shore, it might not be educational, but I've got an example for you of something that is. Every summer, I work at a basketball camp, and sometimes I get bad campers. I had one kid named Austin who would just stand there, dribbling the ball, every time I tried to talk. I'd say, Austin, cut it out. Austin, stop it. Still standing there, dribbling the ball. Finally, I took Austin over to the side, and I said, Austin, last year, there was a camper who would keep on dribbling the ball when I talked, and mysteriously, in the middle of the week, he disappeared and never came back. Suddenly, the ball doesn't bounce anymore. By using the story, I was able to grab Austin's attention. But if you look for real-life application, we can look to a study done by Uri Hassan at Princeton University. He had two cases. In one situation, the students learned information from a PowerPoint. The teacher read it off, and that was all. In the other situation, the teacher told a story about something that was going on. In the case of the students who were watching the PowerPoint, the only portion of their brain that were active were the portions of speech interpretation. For the students who were listening to the story, they had the same parts of their brain activated as the person who was telling the speech. It was as if they were there, experiencing the same thing that the person was teaching. And beyond that, when they took tests to see who had greater retention, the students who were listening to the presentation of the story blew away the other students. In this situation, we have a case where they're able to apply their knowledge because they have a greater context of what's going on. Now, up until this point, the only thing I've talked about is how teachers can communicate to students. But at the same time, as I mentioned before, it's a generation-to-generation thing. Each generation must be able to transfer information to the next generation. And that's why I think classes, like the public speaking classes that so many of you are in, and competitions like this are so important, because they allow us as the next generation to tell our story to the people who are coming up next. So as you've listened to the presentations we've heard so far, and you listen to the presentations that we'll hear for the rest of the night, I hope that we, as speakers, are able to interest you, and I hope that you, as listeners, are able to learn. Thank you.
Judges?
Aiden, I think you opened with a good parable. I think it was a little bit long. Right? I think that it was a little bit long for the purpose of the speech. I wanted to hear more of your speech and a little less of that story. I did enjoy your personal story, even though you threatened a child. Right? Whatever works, right? You know, honestly, I thought the speech was well structured. It was good. There was a lot that was really to be liked about it. There's more passion in you than I've seen so far. I can tell. All right, your personality is being held back a little bit by the structure of the speech you prepared for tonight. I want to see more of your personality. Okay, can you let loose a little bit? A little bit. All right.
Just a hair. I really liked the story to start. I agreed it was a hair long, but I was pulled in right away. I wanted to hear the end. Was about to take notes and I put my pencil down because I wanted to hear more of the story. So it wasn't hair too long, but I was still listening. I was still focused. As far as the basketball goes, I love your style of parenting. I think that's awesome. Your speed was great. Your hand motions were useful but controlled. They went to the top. And I'm looking forward to seeing follow-ups about that topic. I think there's some more interesting stuff in there that, had it been a little bit shorter of a story, we could get a little more. So next round would be great for that.
Thank you. Aiden, well done. When you first came out, you stood there for a minute, and something I noticed about the other speakers and something that I do in my political life when we have debates or speeches, you thank the people who invited you, you say hi to everybody. You didn't do that. You came out with a story, and I listened to it. I sat back, I didn't write anything because we were listening to the story, and it worked. Right? I think you took a risk there, and I thought the risk paid off for you. It was interesting. It had everybody's attention, so I think my story was good. It was the most creative start to a speech so far tonight, so I like that. I agree with everything that they've said, the real experiences, wrote that down. And everybody likes listening to a story. I thought your message was good. And I also thought the timing was good. It wasn't too long. At least I don't think it was long. I was sitting here, I was timing it, but to me I think it ended on time, so I think you did good.
You're a little long.
What? I'm long. I'll stop. Maybe more time.
I just want to say one thing. Obviously, we just finished a whole round of speeches, and I don't know what you guys are thinking, but I think I know what we're thinking, and that's that we've got a competition on our hands. Is that fair to say?
Okay, that concludes the end of the first round. So what I would like to do is allow our judges just a few moments to collect their thoughts and take a few notes. While we're doing that, I invite our contestants to grab a seat here on stage as we begin to set up for the second round. While everybody's getting set up, there's a lot of people that I would like to thank tonight, and hopefully by the end of the competition I'll have a chance to do that. There's one particular person that I would like to give a special thanks to. He's sitting right here. Dave Ripken was a 1100 student of mine, and Dave came up to me at the end of the semester, and Dave was very poignant and said, Professor McGuire, it was a great class, I enjoyed it, learned a lot, thank you. Now let's talk business. I think that this course needs an opportunity for students to showcase what they've learned and needs an opportunity for them to demonstrate to their peers what they're capable of. This started off as an idea, a conversation that took place in an office about 12 months ago. And the reason that I point this out is, first and foremost, Dave, I want to thank you for bringing that idea to my attention. And I would like to give him a round of applause. But more importantly, we've heard a lot of great speeches so far tonight, and I think that there's been a theme to all of them. The communication is central to the evolution, not just of your education, but you yourself as a person. If you have an idea, tell somebody about it, because here tonight is evidence that a simple idea that took place at the beginning of a conversation came into fruition and put over 400 people in seats tonight and allowed these people to compete for over $450 in prize money and a great trophy that we'll give out a little bit. Okay. So it looks like we are ready to begin our second round. Are we all set? So the second round is a question and answer format. It will be relatively short, and you judges. And so what we're going to do is we're going to invite our first contestant up. Stephanie, come on up. So what we're going to do right now is the judges and the speakers have been randomly paired together. In our first pairing will be Judge Stefano asking Stephanie a question about her earlier speech.
All right, thank you, Lori. Hello again, Stephanie. Okay, so you gave a really interesting speech the first time around, and you talked to us about the recipe for a successful education. I watch a lot of Food Network. I do. I'm not proud of it, but. And what I always realize is the master chefs, right? They go above and beyond, right? And those special restaurants that they visit, right? They go above and beyond. And every time there's that moment. So what's the secret right? What's the secret element? Because we can all make chicken, we can all make pasta, right? What's the secret element? And I'm sure that culinary training gets you the basics, and then it gets you above the basics. It gets you good, right? But then to be great, you've got to go out and explore on your own. So let's take the metaphor and stretch it into your actual speech. For a student to go from being good at this university thing to be great, what's the secret, special, awesome ingredient that blows everybody away?
So I think in order to be a master chef at the University of Connecticut, you need to get as many ingredients as you possibly can. There are absolutely no bad ingredients, no bad interactions that you have. Whether or not you like the person, whether or not they're hard to work with in a group or anything, it doesn't matter. You learn something from them. You may learn their strengths that you may lack. You may learn their weaknesses that you excel in. And it just altogether brings you together to be a well-rounded person and a well-rounded student at the University of Connecticut. If I had to say there was one ingredient that I think would make any student be master chef, is it cliche to say communication? Yeah? Oh, okay, we'll go with it then.
We'll read it then.
Okay. I think, honestly, if you're able to interact with people in interpersonal levels, public speaking levels, group levels, whatever you know your niche is, I think if you're able to take advantage of that and communicate to as many people as you possibly can, the more interactions you're going to have, the more ingredients you're going to have to work with, which will help your recipe in total. So whether or not you're good at talking one-on-one to a person, whether you're good at speaking to a group of people or working in a small group setting, I think if you figure out exactly what you're good at, just roll with it, and your recipe will turn out great.
All right, judges, our second contestant will be Aiden Paul. Aiden, come on up. So Aiden's question will be provided by Emily Noonan.
Okay, so you talked about communication and storytelling and passing down from generation to generation. Can you talk about the communication that you've seen in this generation? We know this is a Twitter, a Facebook, an instant access kind of a world where you have 140 characters or less. Emails are written instead of writing handwritten letters. Can you talk about how modern communication affects personal relationships, both good and bad?
I think one thing that we look at is we see the way that stories have been passed down and the different ways that they've been passed down is that it's more and more and more. So if we look at it from before there was a printing press, there was only a few texts that became massively used and massively known. And then there was the printing press, and we have newspapers, and we have everything else that becomes published to the point where anyone can have access to it. Well, we just had the third revolution, in my opinion, with the advent of the computer. And with what you're talking about, Twitter, and all that other nonsense on the computer. What happens is, now we're going to have a whole lot more information that's recorded in one way or another. So I think the next step that we have to improving our communication with that information is filtering it. Because when you have that much of it, you have to boil it down to what's the theme of the story. It's like when you have a story in general. You have all the parts that go into making it, but you have to get to the core of it at some point. By having what's on the internet be available to everybody, it's great. But you need to find a way to get to what you want. Which is why search engines, which is why all of the resources that you have to look at only certain parts of the internet, I think are going to play a huge part in the future. What we need to do with that is by looking at only the portions, not only the portions of news outlets and other educational sources, but when you're looking to find out about the history of something, you need to go to those sources, the reliable ones. Thank you.
Emily, how many Twitter followers do you have?
More after tonight?
Yeah. What's the Twitter handle?
At Emily Noonan. That's such a shameless plug, though, but I'll take any followers.
We're trying to kill time for microphones over here. So if you are not currently following Emily, she would love for you to follow her at Emily Noonan, right?
Only on Twitter, don't follow her.
right, our third contestant is Brendan, and Brendan, we mentioned earlier that you are a political science major, and it works out that randomly you were selected to have your question asked by our 59th district state representative.
Was that random? I was wondering.
Representative Conner.
Was it random?
Absolutely.
I looked at it, I saw your role model for speaking was Bill Clinton. This has nothing to do with the question, by the way. So I immediately like that. He's my role model, too, in speaking. Bill Clinton could give a speech and then go off that speech and talk for hours and stay on point and deliver his message. Anyway, your speech as a follow-up question. Brendan, it was evident that you've had many life experiences, and you gave us, the audience and the judges here, a lot of advice in your speech. Can you give us a specific example of one of those experiences, who gave you the advice, and how it influenced your life? Additionally, I want you to tell us the reason that advice stuck. How was that advice delivered to you?
Thank you. So I guess I'll start answering this question with a story. I once got the pleasure of seeing Tom Ridge, the former Secretary of Homeland Security. He was giving a speech about globalization, and I was privileged enough to kind of meet with him beforehand in a youth panel, and he sat us down and said, the one thing I can tell you guys as young students and scholars is that we're in an increasingly globalized world, and you have to take that into account. And he said that try to think about how your actions influence other people, and when you're communicating with other people, try to think about how their experiences might play in and be value-added activities to whatever you're doing. And that really kind of went to heart with me, because it's interesting when you're working in a group setting, as Stephen had talked about, or even when you're meeting someone new, to consider their perspective. We're in a globalized society where people can come from anywhere. People can have a variety of different experiences. And when you're communicating with them, you really have to think about what can this person bring to the table. So if I met someone that came from a different country or a different culture, I'd communicate with them in a way that brought out their strengths and ask them about their experiences and how they could contribute, whether it's a group project or an organization. And I believe it's important to consider different aspects when you're talking to someone. So think about how your words might be perceived by them. Make sure that you're not offending anyone, and make sure that you can really use everyone's strengths, their full potential, because we are in a globalized society. You're not in a room of 30 people who are exactly the same as you, and I think that's important to remember. Thank you.
All right, to keep the randomness of tonight's contest going, especially here in the second round, our next contestant, Mr. Stephen Riley. Come on, join me, Stephen. Your question will be provided. Can you guess?
Steve?
I'm going to take Steve. That is correct.
Oh, hey, Steve. So, you gave a speech about group projects.
This is true.
That's it. That was my question. I love group projects. And I do, and I'll tell you why. Because as an instructor of communication, I don't know that I love them as just an everyday instructor wandering around this campus, because of a lot of reasons. There's a lot of reasons, right? But as an instructor of communication, I love them because it puts you, and all of you, in these messes that you need to sort out. And I've experimented with this. I've done small messes, groups of 3, 4, 3 weeks, simple solution. I've done big messes, groups of 10, 12, bigger problem all semester. And just recently, I did a huge mess, group of 30, one challenge. Meet the challenge, you all get an A. It was fascinating and terrifying for all of us. So here's the thing, I love these, but they don't always go well. And I realize that every time I assign one, I'm taking a chance. I'm taking a chance for a number of reasons. Most of all, the fact that my students might do this project, finish it at the end of the semester, walk out, and not like me, or respect me, or appreciate what they learned in the class nearly as much as they would if I hadn't done that. So, you gave this group great perspective about group projects. I'm a faculty member. Give me a perspective. Speak for your fellow man and woman out here, and tell me what I need to know to make a great group project.
Gotcha. Well, the first thing that I want to start out with, because you said you have this group of 30 people, you're describing it as a mess. I'm thinking, wow, once I get out of college, where am I going? I'm not sitting with 3 people all the time. You and I know that, we all know that. We're sitting with that 30-person, corporation, getting in emails from left and right. So I gotta know that that's, one of the many ways to, look at it. First of all, it's not totally a mess if you're working with something that's immediately applicable the moment you step outside of this, at the UConn, at the stores. What are some other things that you could do as a teacher? Well, that's a challenge because it's definitely the direction that you want to go with it. Do you want to make it completely random? Do you want to have kids that know nothing about each other? Because then you have to go through that whole process of introduction, getting to know each other, getting to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. Or is it possible that you could put kids together that have been in the same class for a while? These are kids that now know each other, have known some of their strengths and weaknesses, and it's possible that you can take a project that's a lot more difficult and bring up that scale. But as I said before, you're dealing with both of those all the time. You're dealing with people that you've met before, a team and things like that, and you're also dealing with people that you've never met before. And another point that I think is worth making is, if you're going to go as far as to define the roles of the students, I think this is pretty interesting too. Somebody like me, I'm always the guy that tries to want to talk and be funny, as you could see from here. But I think it's always interesting when a teacher tries to put me in a role that's the exact opposite of that, because I think that's a very interesting way to learn. But I'm going to put this in a sports analogy real quick. You could try to be the best baseball hitter day in, day out. But maybe you should take a couple throws at the pitcher's mound and see how that works too. You get to think from the other side of the ball, and that allows you to become a better group member, at the end of the day. You know what you're feeling like, your perspective, the things that you're good at, but you get to also see the other person's strengths and weaknesses and possibly relate to them a little bit better. So with a combination of it just being applicable, and of course having the different strengths and weaknesses at different viewpoints, I think you make a better group project for not only the entire group, but the individual as well.
I have to say that baseball analogy really hits home for our group of judges up here. There's a good camaraderie between the communication department and our softball team. And Emily, who's a member of the Winged A's, we're trying to get her to come over and play softball over the summer. I've seen Steve hit and I've seen him pitch, and I have to say he's a much better hitter than he's a pitcher. So our last contestant for the question and answer round is Ian Maxwell, and this question will be asked by Emily Noonan.
It's nice that you want me to play on your team, but I only play for championship teams, and seeing as we beat you last year in the championship, I'm going to stay right where I am.
And I think
Can we use the department listserv, Chris, to send out the email to tell everybody to show up and we're in the championship game beating them this year? Can we do that?
Send it to all my new Twitter followers.
how about 2 out of that 4 championships have come
I'm
our
sorry,
way?
I can't hear you. It's time for the question. Alright, yeah. It's about them. It's about them. Alright, so you talked about passion in your first speech, specifically in music. Clearly we have passions in athletics, and sometimes that makes you say things more aggressively. We've seen that here right now, but also in the news, this year in particular, you're seeing athletes right after a big play say things that they regret, or maybe the people above them regret for them. So can you talk about when that emotion gets overwhelming, when it becomes too much, and how the best way is to channel that emotion, whether it is from music, from athletics, anything? What is the right amount of emotion, and what's too much, and how do you rein it back into that?
I think it's really interesting that you asked that question, because I do have a very strong passion, and you have that strong passion, and we all have those passions. And a lot of, I think, knowing the proper way when to rein it in is knowing social context, at least for me. I know that when I started being part of an a cappella group here at UConn, I'm a member of CDN, completely different note. See some guys in the back representing. Okay. One of the biggest things they said is, Ian, do less. Because I loved what I was doing. I was so excited to be a part of this thing, but I didn't get all the social cues. I didn't get the context of what was going on. And the biggest thing for me was learning how to channel that passion and how to know when to tone it back. Because sometimes doing less can help people connect with you better. If you get too much in somebody's face, sometimes they're going to get a little on the defensive, and that makes it so much harder to bridge that gap, because that's what communication is all about. It's bridging the gap. It's connecting with the other person. So understanding the group that you're in and what the norms are for that group, understanding who's listening, how they might feel about it, and understanding when it's right to give it all you got and when it's right to bring it back. This is all just understanding social context, and I think that's the key to controlling that. Thank you.
the second round of this competition, and this is where things are going to get very interesting. So what's going to happen right now is I'm about to provide the audience, and more importantly the speakers, with their concept for the final round, which is going to be an improvisational speech. The speakers in a moment, after I give them their topic, will get up and they will leave the room, and they will have a few moments briefly to put together their final topic. So before they do that, I have to, of course, give them their speech topic, which is going to be, and many of you have already addressed it. Technology is changing the world around us, and so my question for you this evening is going to be, which one specific technology do you believe is going to change the role and the way that we educate our future over the next 20 years? All right, contestants, you have your topic. You will be escorted out by Brooke. Judges, fine job so far. So I ask the audience to remain seated. We are very fortunate this evening to have a special performance tonight by the Danbury. In a few moments, once we get the stage cleared up, we will bring them on down. Come on down here. For the last 2.5 years, and took this organization from something that was barely meeting with a few members to being here tonight and hosting events such as this. So a big warm round of applause for Katie and all. And Katie has been tasked with the important role of pulling some numbers. So we have 4 Comm Society t-shirts that we'd like to give away tonight. So Katie, go ahead and pull that first number, please. Our first number is 733478.
Oh my God.
I've always wanted to do this, see if I have the arm to get this thing up here. Can we get another number? That's fun. Let's pull all upstairs numbers. Next number, 733436. Oh yeah, where the hands jump go? I'll bring you. Katie, can we get another number? Now we're having fun, right? number 733461. 461, going once. Going twice. Call another number. 461, not getting credit tomorrow. 733220. Where's that one? All right, Katie's last number of the evening is 733593. Last three digits are 593. Going once, twice. I'm gonna check this ticket. See if I got. All right, thanks everybody. So let's turn up the music. Give me about 120 seconds of some music. Chill out if you guys need to use the restroom. Because I am going to bring it back with a All right, welcome back everybody. Thank you to the dance team. We appreciate your performance. All right, let's go ahead and get this third round started. So the third round, as we mentioned before, is an improvisational round. So the contestants just have a few moments to go ahead and put their final thoughts together to answer the question, which I will reiterate for everybody's sake. Technology is certainly changing the world around us, and everybody is aware of that. The question was, which particular technology do the contestants believe will have the greatest impact on the way that we educate our youth over the next 20 years? And the random selection puts Brendan Costello as our first speaker. So please welcome Brendan back to the stage.
All right, thank you again. I'd like to start my speech by reminding you what I talked about in my first speech about perspective. I was able to give you one perspective on communication, but you've been able to see four more. And I think if I was posed this question a few hours ago, I'd answer it much differently than I am now, because all the other perspectives of the speakers really have enlightened me into a different way of thinking, and I'd like to draw upon some of their speeches as well in my answer, and I hope they don't mind. But I'd like to say that the Google search is the most important technological innovation towards communication today and in the future. And I'd explain that it is because I break communication down into two component pieces. First, there's the gathering and analyzing of information, and second, there is the regurgitating of that information. And I think that, you have ingredients in your cake pre-prepared for Google search. You already have at your fingertips a repository of thousands and millions and billions of articles and information from which to gather and analyze your data, which we then communicate. And, maybe 50 years ago, if you wanted to know who the first president was, you'd go and you'd ask a professor, you'd look in a dictionary encyclopedia, and you'd see George Washington. Now, you type into Google, you get 2 billion results, 1 billion of which say George Washington, and the other billion of which are pictures of cats. But the fact is, because Google has already taken care of the first step of communication, it gives you no excuse to make the second step not as good as you possibly can. The fact that you already have the information at your fingertips means you can spend double the time working on your presentation, working on your analytical skills, working on your regurgitation of the information. That I turn to the perspective of Stephen. And Stephen has told us how you really need to consider everyone in the group's input. And you can focus more on who can contribute what, how you're going to present a project, if the information is at your fingertips. And I know Ian talked a lot about passion and persuasion. And if you have the information in front of you, You can spend more time on being passionate, on being persuasive. So I believe that I'd like to end this speech with a challenge to all of you. Because you live in the 21st century, because the first step of communication is provided to all of you, don't waste that amenity. Don't shorten the time of preparing speeches. Don't shorten the time of preparing projects. Use that to your advantage. Take the information that's given to you and put passion in your speech. Put practice into your speech. Put analysis into your speech. Technology is a beautiful thing, and it can make us better people and a better society. Don't waste it. Use it. Thank you.
Any final feedback from London?
Just one piece. Brendan, you came to life a little bit more there at the end. That was nice. There was some passion to it. The Google jokes, the cats. I mean, it was solid. You really kind of put it all together, integrated a few things that we'd given you feedback on. It was a really strong finish for you. So congrats on that.
All right, thank you, judges. Thank you, Brendan. Okay, let's keep this thing moving along. Our second contestant for the final round tonight will be Aiden Call. Is Aiden ready to speak? Where is Aiden? Aiden is making his way to the stage. Okay. Aiden, come on down. The price is right. All right, Aiden, the stage is yours.
If I look tired today, you guys are gonna have to forgive me. I had a pretty busy weekend. On Friday, I went hunting in a forest in Connecticut. On Saturday, I actually had the privilege to play in a basketball game with UConn graduate and current NBA player Andre Drummond. And then on Sunday, I fought with Martians in outer space. By now, you're probably questioning the validity of my claims, if it wasn't after Andre Drummond, certainly after the aliens. Well, it's not completely true, but it's also not completely false. I did all these in a video game. Now, for the older members of our audience, video games might bring up images of Pong, where the ball just goes back and forth, and that's the only image on the screen. Today's video games have changed drastically. Now, images are crystal clear, and everything looks as if it is in real life. It's harder and harder to distinguish what's in the video game and what's in real life. What I think is going to happen in the next 20 years is that we're going to begin to use video games in order to simulate real-life situations in the educational process. And interestingly enough, the benefits of video games overlap very nicely with the benefits of storytelling. You get the same way that it interests the user of the video game. Additionally, you get the same way that it deals with a real-life application of a process. And for a third reason, it makes sure that whatever you do wrong in the video game, you're not harming someone in real life. So, you all have your favorite video game. Actually, probably not true. A lot of you guys probably don't play video games, but for those of you who do, it can be addicting. It can be something that gets you wanting to come back again and again and again, because it's interesting and it's fun. There's something inherently pleasing about controlling something else. And when you have an ability to apply this to something in real life, if you're a biologist, you can practice dissecting something through a video game rather than taking the time and the resources to bring in a body to do it in real life. This makes it easier for the school while maintaining the aspect of a real life application. And thirdly, if you're a surgeon in practice, one mistake that you make in real life can lead to death in the real world. But if you were to do this in a video game, your mistake doesn't matter that much. You just retry, and you keep working at it until you get it perfect. In this sense, video games can change everything about education. We just need to accept it and get rid of the stigma of video games being something only for nerds. Thank you.
As a video game researcher, I make that argument all the time, so I certainly appreciate you making that argument here today. Dave, you and I grew up playing a lot of video games together, so that should resonate with you. But Emily, go ahead.
I don't play video games, so maybe it wouldn't resonate with me, but I thought you did a really good job. No, you did a great job of bringing it back to people who don't play video games. talking about surgeons being active, all the simulator stuff. I thought that was really a great factor to anyone who didn't play video games. You started out with some interesting facts that started out seemingly it was going to be a humble brag, and then you brought us all down to earth. And I thought that was a great way to show not just reality versus virtual reality. Thank you for the assist on that one. And it translates to in communications all over the place, being able to see what's real and getting information right away, and how much of that is real and how much of it do you need to sift through. So I thought you did a really good job with that, and on short notice, it was really good. Thank you.
Thanks, Emily. All right, is our third speaker prepared and ready to go? Do I see? Stephanie, come on down. You will be our third contestant. See if the judges agree.
So I think the biggest contribution to society in general in the future isn't what most other people would think. I think the biggest contribution to technology is going to be the blender. Sticking with the whole kitchen theme going on here. See, what I think is, I'm not by any means bashing technology in the future. I think that the internet and that media, TV, and everything have great contributions. But in general, I think that what people take most out of the interactions, out of their ingredients, are the nonverbal skills they learn from other people, as well as the verbal skills. The verbal skills you can see on the internet and on media and everything, but in order to interact with them one-on-one, you're able to take those interpersonal, public speaking, group skills of nonverbal communication and apply them directly to yourself. So when I say blender, I mean taking different parts of different ingredients that you get. Say, for example, your leadership skills, I'm learning them from you. And your teamwork skills, I'm learning those from you too. But instead of taking different ingredients in different amounts, so maybe a whole lot of leadership and a little bit of teamwork, I'm combining them into one consistent blend. So you're getting the best of both worlds. All of your ingredients, you're combining them all together to make yourself a well-rounded individual. So that's why I say blender. And in general, I do agree that there are different types of technology that will contribute towards society and towards education in the future. But I do agree that the most important trait that one can get from relationships and their ingredients is the entire process of nonverbal communication and those skills that they get. So like I said, leadership, teamwork, maybe experience from someone else, and random facts about zebras from the zoo. All those coming together, that is what will make you a well-rounded individual, and getting the right consistency will be anything but a recipe for disaster.
All right, judges, that answer just encompassed kitchen appliances, zebras from the zoo, and leadership.
It did. Thank you, Rory.
That's correct. I thought I would provide a recap for you, Dick.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Rory. Stephanie, very old school. So how did your mom at the beginning, and now you're just talking about a blender. Not a 21st century piece of technology. It was risky. You used a blender as an analogy for life, and trying to tie it to Rory's question. On short notice, I think it was creative. I think you probably ran with that right away, spent your time thinking about it, and did it. To tell you the truth, I think if you had more time, you might have come up with a better piece of technology, but I think it worked. You stuck to what you know. You did well the first round. I think you had very constructive comments from the judges, so I think you probably wanted to continue to play off that. It was risky. I think we'll talk about it up here. But I think you did a good job. Your presence, again, you're very natural. You did well up there. I question the blender, but I think it may have worked. So good job.
Thank you. Just as a side note, anytime I have a politician tell me that he's gonna, tell me the truth, then I start to worry. But thanks, Dave. I appreciate you being honest with us. Okay, our next contestant will be Ian Maxwell. Ian. Okay. All right, Ian, the stage is yours.
So, when the topic of technology and its role in communication came up, my first thought was, oh, social media. Social media is the way to go. As somebody with a passion, social media is my bread and butter. Every time we perform, I go up and I say, hi, we are a completely different note. Please check us out on Facebook, on Instagram, on Tinder, on... We do the social media thing. But to me, I think that it's not social media through the internet that is really going to be the greatest change in communication. It's the wealth of information that's available to us. It's vast, it's varied, it's beautiful, and it's intimidating at the same time. And even though we need to capitalize on it, I think there's some things we need to watch out for. So, some of you may be familiar with the comic Gilbert. One of the characters in it is a character named Dogbert, who is the epitome of cynicism when it comes to the human race. And he said that the information age has expanded the information available far more rapidly than the human mind is able to bring it in. He said it's like firing a fire hose at a teacup. And I'm not that cynical. I believe that the human ability to expand our horizons is great, but we need to avoid shutting down in the face of all the information available to us. It's easy to see countless posts, see so many news stories, and become desensitized to it, and to stop broadening your horizons because of the sheer volume of information out there. An example of this, I think, is I read about in the news a new app that Facebook's coming out with. It's the Facebook newspaper, where it tracks the kind of articles you look at, the kind of pages that you like, and the things that you say and do in social media, and comes up with a newspaper of stories that are catered specifically to your interests. I think that that's almost a little dangerous, because it means we self-confirm. It means our horizons become smaller, not bigger. If you're a liberal and you care about welfare, social welfare, then you're going to see stuff about that. If you're conservative and you care about the economy, that's all you're going to see. As a society, the two generations present in this room are our parents and grandparents, who were the first generation to see the information age and the internet, and us, the millennials, who've grown up being the first generation to grow up with the information age. We need to be careful, and we need to use this vast wealth of information as a way of broadening our horizons, of connecting with other cultures and other ideas, to become the most interconnected generation the world has ever seen. That's the way we need to utilize it. Make our horizons ever grow and never become smaller. Thank you.
Ian, in a sense, your specific technology was a bit abstract, but in the sense of the internet and what it acts as in terms of being a repository, it was very concrete to me. There's a point when you watch these reality shows where they do competitions where it's always Simon, right? Who's like, I think you're going to win this competition. Right? I wouldn't go that far because I don't know what the other judges are tallying yet, and we don't have numbers, and I'm not Simon Cowell, but I will say, I think that speech right there just helped seal you towards the top of this competition.
We'll see how the numbers compile in just a few moments. All right, we have one speaker left to finish off our entire competition for the evening, so please help me welcome back Steve Riley.
All right. So we all know UConn's great, right? Dual champs. We're doing well for ourselves. It's awesome every day here. Love the store's campus. The weather's getting nicer. Let's talk about the part of UConn that we don't really enjoy. Let's talk about tuition, man. I gotta pay so much money. You know what I'm talking about? Thousands and thousands of dollars. You wanna know the technology that's gonna change education in the next few years? 20 years, 10 years? Well, it's happening right now. It's the technology behind being able to take classes online. Whether you wanna call that Skype, whether you wanna call that webcams, YouTube, that's what I'm talking about. You see, people here don't really love taking classes online, but there's a select few. And there's a lot of benefits too. I gotta wake up every day at 8 in the morning to make my 9 o'clock class. With an online class, I might not need to do that. I'll watch the class whenever time I need to, see it. I'll be able to swallow the information and things like that. But hey, there are other benefits too. When it's icy, I know how those stores' roads can get icy. You know what I'm talking about? You don't need to go to Laurel Hall. You don't even need to leave your home. Hot cocoa. professor on the monitor. And what can we do? We can cut costs. You're not going to have to pay for as many professors. You're not going to have to pay for as many TAs. You're not going to have to pay for the janitors that are cleaning the lecture halls. You're not going to have to pay for any of that. Thousands and thousands of dollars off of our tuition bill. It's amazing. Every college in the country will be doing this, I promise, right? It makes so much sense. Some people will say, well, what happens if I want to ask a question? Well, lecture halls right now, you don't ask questions. You wait till the class is over. You email the person that you have to talk to. There's no face-to-face contact. What are you losing in this deal? And since it works so good for college, which is already expensive enough, apply it to high schools too. You know what I mean? Think about high schools. You take a bus in the morning at like 7 o'clock or earlier, and that's ridiculous. Teenage plans don't function on that. What do you like about high school? You don't get to socialize. You sit in a class all day, so you cut that out too. You cut out the classes there. You take the classes at home. No more cruddy food, nothing like that. You get to sit home, do what you enjoy, and take the classes on your own time. And since it works for high schools, I mean, how different is a high school from a middle school, right? And I know it sounds crazy, but you can just keep it moving. And things like that. It's an amazing business plan. You gotta wonder why they're not talking to you right now, getting this in action. And after middle schools, you can keep going down the line, and things like that. Every single person's taxes will be way down. Tuition costs will be way down. Costs of private schools will be way down. And you can bring in professors from all over the country, different teachers for your young students, professors for the older students that are heralded, major Ivy League professors teaching your class. The class you took today is now taught by an Ivy League professor, distinguished. Even Oxford, I'm telling you, it's going to be great. You'd assume that everybody's going to be doing this at all ages. So now let's imagine a world where the elementary school kid doesn't have to go to elementary school. The middle school kid doesn't have to go to middle school, and they get to sit home. And maybe if they're not sitting home, it's shorter days, but whatever. But now since they're taking that class online, little Billy in first grade doesn't meet his first crush. Develops majorly differently, and of course, he's not the same person that we see today. And of course, the value of the classroom setting, you're still getting the education, but you're not getting the social aspect. So in middle school, little Tommy doesn't get his group of friends that, he knows and loves and going through some tough times now. In high school, maybe Jessica, who was a great student, A's, A pluses, doesn't show up and she's losing interest because she doesn't have that classroom environment to pull them in. And for college students, I mean, what is there for us? We meet other people there, of course, just like everything else, but our development would be so changed by that point. It takes away the social aspect of it, which seemed okay at first, right? Think of all those thousands of dollars, but really, even though it's thousands and thousands of dollars, penny on penny, dime, it all stacks up. And we complain about it, and we put it in the newspaper, and we get upset. At the end of the day, we don't realize how fortunate we are to have these classes where we can go in and meet TAs and meet professors that inspire us, meet students that inspire us. It's a major, just a whole place of inspiration. And so I believe that the technology introduced here, with having classes being taken online, is going to create a major disparity between those that want to push for the lower cost, those guys that want the tuition lower, and those who want to keep the social aspect in education. Thank you.
Dean, well done, sir. That was a great final speech. I'll give you that. You came out, I mean, you're creative in that certain amount of time. You came out of here, you were selling that technology, you were selling online courses, and I wasn't buying it, right? Okay? So then, I was thinking to myself, well, good thing this is a public speaking competition and not a debate class, because I think, I'm going to grade you high on your public speaking and would want to debate. But then you turned around and you started talking about the negatives of online courses. So I was happy to hear that. However, I think the question was the greatest technology of the 21st century, how it's going to impact the future. And I didn't get a clear message. I'm going to give you high scores. It was a great speech. I just don't know if you favor it or if you don't favor it, and why it might be the best online course, or the best technology, I'm sorry. But Steven, overall, fantastic. You had everybody here laughing. You had the judges laughing. We were into it big time. I give you high scores for that. Good job.
Just say that I think that did make the point that it was the most important because of its negative. That's what I got out of it, and I loved that you took it. At first you're like, all right, I'm sold, I'm in this, and then all of a sudden, when you take it further and further, more extreme, and you got the humor, then you understand, yeah, maybe it is important, but important doesn't necessarily mean positive. And I thought that came across really well. Like you said, you're natural. You're a stand-up comedian up here. You got the crowd in. I thought that was really great. And I thought you drew us in from the beginning, and we didn't let go to the end. And the crowd responded to that.
Yeah, just real quick, that was the crossover dribble of speeches tonight, right? You went the other way, and I think you broke all our ankles, so good job.
All right, folks, that was our last speech. So now it's time to give out some hardware. We're going to keep our sports analogies going. So what I'd like to do is give the judges a few moments here to collect their thoughts, add their scores. I'd like to invite the contestants back out onto the stage to grab a seat. Before I forget, there's a few folks that I haven't had a chance to thank this evening, and I would like to start by thanking all of you for coming out tonight and being part of this inaugural public speaking competition. We really hope that we've inspired a few of you out there in the audience tonight to come join us up here on stage. We'll be hosting this again, this time again next year. So first and foremost, a round of applause for yourselves. I appreciate you guys coming down here tonight. And then secondly, I'd like to thank the entire communication society, everybody that was a part of making this event possible. Particularly, I'd like to thank Brooke Hersheimer and Caitlin Young for all their dedicated assistance throughout the last 12 months in making this possible. I'd also like to take a second just to thank our judges, Steve Stefano, Emily Noonan, David Kiner. Thank you for coming out here tonight. Appreciate that a lot. Finally, the judges are not very good at math, so I'm going to give them a hand to do some calculations. While I do that, I would like to invite up a special guest that we have here this evening. Dr. Christine Nowak is the head of the communication department and came out tonight to provide us some support. She would like to share a few thoughts with us before we announce our final winners. Thank you.
There's a couple people that haven't been thanked yet, first of which is actually Rory McGloin himself, who took this on and organized a great group of people, and this event wouldn't have happened without him. So I just like to say thanks to him. And then there's another group of people that actually hasn't been thanked yet, and I just want to thank our speakers. I believe that communication is, when you communicate with somebody, you give a piece of yourself. And I think that each one of these speakers gave a different piece of themselves, and I'm going to take a minute, so don't turn off my mic, Rory, yet. Because I think that this needs to be said. First of all, the importance of public speaking is when employers ask us when we ask employers, when we survey employers what they most want from people, from college graduates, they say they want people who can speak in public. And so this competition is very important, and the courses that you all are taking are very important for that as well, because communication is education. Now let me tell you, Stephen talked to us about the importance of group projects. 90% of what you'll do in your place of employment is group projects. It's really important that you figure that out. And he gave us some really good tips. But I think my favorite part was that he wants us to work in groups and to learn to bring out the best in each other, because that's going to motivate us all to be better human beings. And I thank you for that. That was very nice. Brendan, who did call communication a buzzword, so we're going to have to talk about that, because it's a field of study. Somebody later called it a cliche. It's not. It's a field of study. But Brendan also talked about the importance of communication being an effective persuasion to get what you want, to communicate your point, and to be effective in that is an important thing. So that can't happen without communication, so thanks for that reminder. Ian told us that we can't share our passion without effective communication. Again, sharing his passion with us in his time. Stephanie, of course, talked to us about the people in our lives as the recipe for success. So success in that way, in her view, is the people in her life, the important people in her life, and being an important person in somebody else's life can contribute to their successful life. And I think that was a beautiful sentiment as well. And then Aiden talked about stories and the fact that our ability, the stories that we share with others are gifts that people give to one another. And I really think that is a nice place to end this talk. The stories that you share with others, the things that you tell about yourselves and others, are your gifts that you give to one another into the future. And I just want to thank them for giving me that aspect and that perspective on communication. And I'm very glad that I don't have to judge them. I could just sit back and enjoy the gift that they were giving to us.
as Dr. Noack just mentioned, this is no easy task, but after all, it is a competition, and all of you came tonight to hopefully see somebody get awarded that trophy. So let's go ahead and make that process happen. What I would like to do now is invite our top 3 contestants to the front of the stage. So could I please have in no particular order, Brendan Costello, Ian Maxwell, and Stephen Riley. If this was American Idol, we would go to commercial break right now. Okay, so in 3rd place this evening, please give a congratulations applause to Brendan Costello. Thank you, Brendan, for your performance tonight. In 2nd place this evening, the judges have selected Stephen Riley. And our winner of the first ever Communication Society Public Speaking Competition is Ian Maxwell.